Hi, in this video, we are going to look at more practice question on Venn diagram from BMAT Part 1. Now, if you want to review on key concept on Venn diagram, you can watch my previous video. But for this video, we are going to look at more practice question. And hopefully, we can do it in under 15 minutes. Alright, so the first question is from 2004, question 3. If you want to read the question or attempt it on your own, you can pause the video here. If not, we can continue. So, this question reads, out of 100 screws in my box, 60 are cross-headed, 40 are slot-headed, 70 are 3 mm diameter, 20 screws are 4 mm diameter, 10 screws are 5 mm diameter, and then 80 screws are 50 mm long, 5 screws are 35 mm long, 15 screws are 20 mm long. And the question asks, what is the smallest number of cross-headed, 3 mm, 50 mm screws that there could be in the box? Now, what is happening here? If you look at one screw, let me draw it here. There are 3 features that they talk about in this question. They talk about the pattern at the head. So there are two groups. The cross-headed one, 60 screws, and you have the slot-headed. That's the first line. On the second line, you have the diameter. 3 mm, 4 mm, 5 mm. That'll be the diameter. And finally, on the third line, we have length. Okay. So every single screw, they will have 3 characters: the head, the diameter, and length. And this question gives us the numbers of screws in each category. And they ask, what is the smallest number of cross-headed, 3 mm, and 50 mm? Now, if we look at the question, we know right away that looking at cross-headed alone, we have 60 screws. Looking at 3 mm alone, we have 70. Looking at 50 mm long, we have 80 screws. Okay. But the task here is to find screws that fit all 3 criteria. And naturally, you'll say, oh, let's do a 3 circles Venn diagram for this. But I am going to do it differently, because we need to look for a screw which fit all the criteria, and I will be selecting these screws in 2 steps. So step 1, we'll be looking at screws which are both cross-headed and 3 mm. And then from those screws, from step 1, we will say, oh, from those we add on more criteria, 50 mm long. And that will be the step 2. And finally, screws which pass both the first round, step 1, the second round, step 2, that will be the answer. Okay, so step 1. We have crossed head and also 3 mm. And then whatever passed the first round on step 1 will go to step 2. That will be step 1 and 50 mm. Okay, and that will be our game plan. Now, let's start with step 1. This is our Venn diagram. We have the cross. cross-headed. We have the 3mm. Now, screws that we are looking for, that will be screws that fit to criteria, both of them, which means we are looking for an overlapping area, the yellow area. In this case, well, we want to minimize the overlapping area because the question asks for the smallest number. And to minimize the area, again, we want the circle to be pulled apart. Okay, it needs to be pulled apart. It needs to be spread out so that the overlapping area is small. Now, how can we spread it out? Well, we achieve that by saying we want to minimize the outside area, which is this. And the outside area need to be essentially the lowest, 0, so that cross-headed union with 3mm, we get 100 screw, which is everything we have. So cross union 3mm, that should give us everything 100 screw. Now, if you're confused about this, I encourage you to watch the first video because that went over example on this subject. So C union 3mm, that will be again C plus 3mm minus the intersecting area. Take the number 60 for cross-headed for C, 70 for 3mm, plugged in, solving the equation, and we have concluded that the intersecting area contains 30 screws. So at the end of step 1, we conclude that there are 30 screws which are both cross-headed and 3mm, and those are screws that pass the first round and go to a second round, a second step. So now, for the second step, it looks very similar to the process we did before in step 1. We have screws which pass the first step, step 1, and then we have the 50mm. And again, if you want to minimize the yellow intersecting area, we know that if we union step 1 and 50mm, we should get 100 screw. So step 1, union 50mm should give us 100 screw, and that should be step 1 plus 50mm, subtract the intersecting area. So step 1, we have 30 plus 50mm, how many of them? 80 of them, minus this intersecting area. Wait, where did we get the 30 screw? That will be screws that pass the first round, 30 here. So make a note for the connection. Finally, solve the equation, we get 10. And that is our answer. Those are screws that pass the first round and also the second round, and that will be the smallest number of cross-headed 3mm, 50mm long screw. So the answer is B. Next, we look at another question. And this is from 2003 exam, question 18. Again, I encourage you to pause the video and read it on your own. Now for this, there are 15 entries for the BMAT from a sixth form college. 3 of the candidates, well, we have 15 candidates in total, but 3 of them are taking bio, chem, math, and physics. And then the remainder are taking 3 out of 4 subjects. Okay, so when they talk about the remainder, so we have 15 in total, and 3 students, they take all the subject. The remainder will be 15 minus 3, 12 people. Now let's continue. All 15 candidates are taking chem, and 13 of them are taking bio. There are 9 girls, and the question asks, what is the largest number of boys that could be taking both math and physics? Well, there's a lot going on here. And for this kind of question, they often give you more information, or they want to confuse you by giving you more information than you need. So you'll be trying to filter out important and essentially unimportant information. So let's start here. You know that we have 4 subjects. We can draw a 4-circle Venn diagram, but that will be really confusing. But you can see that you can rule out chemistry right away. Why? Chemistry is not relevant because everyone is taking it. So that doesn't help. So we said, okay, we don't care about chemistry. We'll do bio, math, and physics. And the question asks about the largest number that need to be boys and taking both math and physics. First, let's look at boys. How many boys do we have? Well, we have 15 total, and we have 9 girls. Boys will be 15 minus 9, that is 6 boys. Okay. Next, we'll be looking at people who are taking both physics and math. Now, we have to draw a Venn diagram here. So we have physics, we have math, and we have bio. Now, they want the physics and math, right? So they want this area. But when we go back, unfortunately, they don't give us any information about physics at all. Okay, so what should we do? Well, if we feel like we are stuck, we don't know what to do next, we can go through each piece of information and cross out the one we already used and try to use the one we haven't used yet. So, in this case, well, we already used the fact about everyone taking chem, so that's gone. And then we say, oh, here, 3 of the candidates are taking everything. So, we know this is 3, this area. Okay, and that is the area where candidates take all subjects. So we already used that. What else can we do? Well, we already talked about girls, so this, cross it out. The only information we haven't touched is this. 13 candidates are taking biology. And that is a little weird because they ask for physics and math, but they give information on biology. In this case, 13 that will be this circle. Now, what do we know then? If we have 13 candidates in this red circle, and we have 15 candidates in total, we'll be left with this area outside of the red circle, the one I draw in black. How many can be there? Well, for the black, it can be at most 2 people. Why 2? Well, 15 total minus the red, 13. We have 2. And from that, we conclude that this area, the area I called X, that can be at most 2, because X is embedded inside the black area. And the largest the black area can get is 2. So, the largest X can get is 2. So, max X is 2. Okay, now, where are we heading? Well, let's go back to the question. They want us to figure out the largest number of boys that are taking both math and physics. And for math and physics, that will be X plus 3. And that's the largest. So, math and physics, the largest, that will be X, which is 2, plus 3, that is 5 people. Okay, so we are looking for boys, both math and physics. For boys, we have 6 boys. For math and physics, we have 5 people. And the largest we can get intersecting the 2, the answer, that will be to assume that all the 2 circles, the boys and the math and physics, they completely overlap. The answer is 5 people. The largest number of boys that could be taking both math and physics, 5 people. Alright, and that is question 18 on 2003 exam. If you want to pause the video and take note, please do so. Now, we have the last question on the series. And this is actually easier than the first 2. So if you want to attempt on your own, please take your time. So this question reads, at a school, all students who study Spanish also study French. And then we have some students who study German also study Spanish. Okay, so the second piece of information is not as useful as the all students who are taking Spanish also take French. Why? Well, because the one I highlight in blue, it is really strong. Like everyone in Spanish is in French. Versus the second one, some student who study German also study Spanish. That sentence also suggests that there should be some who study German but not Spanish as well. So that's why I conclude that the second information is not so useful. Now the question asks, the situation is represented by the Venn diagram below. And which of the following is represented by the shaded area? Now what's the problem here? The problem is that they don't give us labels. So we'll be giving label ourselves. We start here. All students who study Spanish also study French. And that suggests that all Spanish circle will be contained in the French circle. So we know that this must be Spanish, this must be French. In set terminology, when we say all students in Spanish or in French, we are essentially saying Spanish is a subset of French. Now, if we figure out F and S, we know that the remaining circle must be German. And the shaded area, that is inside the French, inside the German, but outside the Spanish. So, the correct answer will be A. So the shaded area represents students who study German and French, but not Spanish. And that's all the 3 questions from actual BMAT exam that cover Venn diagram.